The galaxy was vast, cold, and silent. A place where once humanity had roamed freely, expanding its colonies and exploring the stars. Yet now, the humans were a mere memory. The galaxy had been taken over by alien species, each more powerful than the last. They had crushed the human race with ease, leaving behind only scattered remains of what once was. Humanity's grand armadas, their starships, had vanished, disappearing into the depths of space. The aliens had hunted them down, certain that the last of the humans had perished in the great battles. For centuries, peace reigned for the alien empires, or so they thought. They had built their mighty empires across the galaxy, their armies the strongest in the universe. They laughed at the thought of the human race ever rising again. To them, the humans were nothing more than a distant, almost forgotten memory. They lived their lives with no fear of retaliation, their hearts set on expansion and conquest. But then, one day, something happened. It was small at first, insignificant even. A faint, strange signal echoed across the stars. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever heard before, a signal that seemed to have no clear origin. At first, the aliens ignored it. They believed it to be a malfunction or perhaps some new, unimportant development. But when it came again, louder this time, clearer, and with more purpose, their attention shifted. The signal wasn't random. It had been sent deliberately. The aliens tried to trace it, but it was as if it had come from nowhere. It bounced off the stars, distorted by deep space, making it impossible to pinpoint. But the one thing they knew for sure was this: the signal was old, very old. It had been traveling for centuries, perhaps longer. It had come from somewhere that the aliens had long since forgotten. A place that was buried in the dark corners of the galaxy. The alien commanders and warlords gathered in their massive, well-fortified command centers. The leaders of each empire scoffed at the idea that humanity was somehow still alive. "It must be an old distress call," one said. "Nothing to worry about. The humans are gone." Yet, in the pit of their stomachs, they felt a growing unease. They had never forgotten the war with humanity. They had never forgotten how the human fleets had fought so fiercely, so unpredictably. And though the humans were gone, the memory of their strength still lingered in the minds of the alien leaders. As the days passed, the signal continued to pulse through the galaxy, slowly gaining strength. The aliens, now uneasy, sent out a few scouts to investigate, but they found nothing. The silence of space remained, and the signal seemed to fade. As quickly as it had arrived, but it wasn't over. It had only just begun. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of alien sensors, humanity had been quietly preparing. They had been hidden from the eyes of the universe for years, existing on the edge of the known galaxy. The remnants of their once mighty fleets had survived, their warships silent, waiting for the day when they would rise again. And that day had finally come. On a distant, forgotten planet, the last of humanity's warships lay dormant, its systems powered down. For years, it had been hidden under layers of rock, buried deep within the planet's crust. Its engines had been silent, its weapons deactivated, its crew in cryosleep. But now, the signal had awoken something. Deep within the ship's core, the ancient systems hummed back to life. The ship's AI activated, slowly bringing the ship back into readiness. The dormant warship, once thought lost forever, was alive again. The commander of the ship, a figure long forgotten by history, awoke from his cryosleep. His name was Captain Varek, a leader of one of the last human fleets. His eyes opened, the coldness of space still lingering in his mind. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. But then it all came flooding back. The war, the defeat, the retreat, and now the awakening. Captain Varek stood up slowly, his body stiff from years of cryosleep. He looked out of the viewport, seeing the stars for the first time in centuries. The ship, the Resurgence, was ready to fight again. It had been a long time, but the humans had survived. They had rebuilt. And now, they were coming for revenge. Varek's hand hovered over the control panel, and with a single press, the ships. Systems fully activated. The warship's engines roared to life, its massive guns rising from their hidden positions. The signal, the one that had been heard across the galaxy, was no accident. It had been sent deliberately, a call for the fleet to rise. The last human armada had been waiting, and now they were ready to strike. Across the galaxy, alien warlords continued to dismiss the signal. They were too confident in their power, too sure of their victory over humanity. But something was changing. There was a feeling in the air, a sense that the galaxy was about to witness something it hadn't seen in a long time, the return of the humans. Captain Varek looked at the stars ahead of him, his face set with determination. The war had never really ended for humanity. They had only been biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment had come. The ships. AI gave a soft chime, signaling that all systems were operational. The weapons were ready, the shields activated, and the ship was fully powered. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. The resurgence was ready to fight. Captain Varek spoke softly, but his words carried the weight of 1,000 years of vengeance. "We're not dead yet," he muttered, "and we're not going to be forgotten." As the resurgence moved out of the planet's orbit, the commander knew that the galaxy was about to change. The aliens would soon learn that humanity was not gone. They would learn that the human race had survived, and now they would face the wrath of the last human armada. The galaxy's silence would soon be broken by the thunderous roar of humanity's revenge. The resurgence moved into the dark void of space, disappearing into the shadows. The first battle would begin soon, and the aliens had no idea what was coming. Humanity had risen from the ashes, and they were ready to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The silent darkness of the galaxy was over. The storm was about to begin. Ask ChatGPT. The galaxy had fallen silent in the wake of humanity's disappearance. The alien empires, having wiped out most of the human race, had long since forgotten the fierceness of humanity's will to survive. For centuries, the remnants of humanity had remained hidden, rebuilding in the dark corners of the galaxy. They had been waiting, watching. Now, the time had come. The first of humanity's warships, the Resurgence, had emerged from the shadows, a symbol of the rage and vengeance that had been festering for centuries. And it would not be alone. The galaxy was about to witness the first clash of an ancient war that had been thought to be over. The vast expanse of space was silent as the Resurgence moved deeper into alien-controlled territory. Its weapon systems were fully powered, its shields raised, and its crew, a mixture of old soldiers and new recruits, awaited their orders. Captain Varek stood at the bridge, looking out into the void. The stars outside appeared distant and cold, like forgotten memories of a time long past. Yet, behind him, the crew was coming to life, as though awakening from a long-forgotten dream. Every soldier on board understood the stakes of this mission. They had all lost something, friends, family, homes, and now it was time to take everything back. "Status report," Varek called, his voice low but firm, as he looked across the quiet expanse of the bridge. His mind was sharp, his focus clear. The time for hesitation had long passed. He would lead his fleet into battle. This was their moment. "We're on course for the Zadro system, Captain," came the calm response from the AI. "Alien forces have been detected in the area. Estimated time until we enter their range: 5 minutes. Their fleet is massive and they are on high alert, but they don't yet know we're here." Varek's lips curled into a small, cold smile. "Let them think we're still a ghost. The surprise is our greatest weapon. The Zadro system, a critical supply route for the alien empire, was home to one of their largest fleets. The aliens were not expecting the surprise attack. Their arrogance had led them to believe that the human threat had been eliminated. But as the resurgence crept closer, that arrogance would soon be shattered. The bridge of the resurgence was tense. The hum of the ship's engines reverberated through the walls, and the air was thick with anticipation. Varek's fingers lightly tapped the console in front of him. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even excited. He was focused. He could feel the weight of the coming battle pressing against him, but it was a feeling he had long since come to understand. This was the moment that would define everything. Humanity had been living in the shadows for too long, and now it was time to make its presence known. They would take back what was theirs. The Eye spoke again, its voice devoid of emotion. "We've entered the Zadros system. The alien fleet is now within range. The enemy ships are preparing for an immediate defensive response. They have detected us." Varek's mind raced for a brief moment. The aliens were fast to respond, but they were not fast enough. They had been too comfortable in their dominance, too sure that humanity was defeated. The first clash of this long-forgotten war would come not with the sound of exploding guns or the roar of ships in battle, but with the eerie silence that often preceded the storm. The aliens would never expect what was coming for them. "Initiate attack," Varek ordered, his voice steady and commanding. The resurgence lurched as its weapon systems activated. The ship's cannons powered up, and the first volley of fire was released, striking an alien cruiser with a devastating force. The alien ship exploded in a burst of fire and debris, disintegrating into the vacuum of space before the aliens even had time to retaliate. The alien forces, initially stunned by the unexpected assault, quickly rallied. Their massive fleet, with its countless warships, began to respond. Fighters launched from their carriers, closing in on the resurgence like a swarm of angry bees. They were fast, agile, but they were no match for the firepower and precision of the human warship. The resurgence's advanced targeting systems locked onto the incoming fighters, and with a series of calculated strikes, they were blown apart in quick succession. But the battle was far from over. The alien fleet, now fully engaged, was relentless. They had the numbers, the firepower, and the experience, but they lacked the one thing that had always made humanity formidable: creativity. The resurgence and its fleet of warships had been designed to fight with unpredictable tactics. They had learned from their past mistakes, and they had adapted in ways that the aliens could never anticipate. The alien ships were heavily armored, but they were slow and cumbersome compared to the resurgence. Humanity's ships had been built for speed, for precision, and for striking with deadly force. The resurgence used its agility to its advantage, darting between enemy fire and launching devastating strikes against the alien fleet. Each shot was calculated, each maneuver executed with purpose. As the battle raged on, Varek stood at the helm of the ship, his eyes scanning the battlefield. He saw the chaos unfolding in front of him: ships exploding, fighters falling from the sky, and alien warships desperately trying to regroup. The aliens were in disarray, their arrogance fading as they realized they were facing something they had never seen before. The humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, and they had come to take back the galaxy. The first wave of alien ships was decimated within minutes. Varek's mind raced as he gave orders, directing his fleet to press the attack. The human warships moved like a swarm, darting between the alien ships, picking them off one by one. The aliens retaliated, but their fire was disorganized, their ships scattered across the battlefield. The resurgence was a masterclass in precision. Each shot hitting its mark, each movement designed to outmaneuver the enemy. As the battle continued, Varek's mind wandered back to the moment when the signal was first sent, when the decision was made to awaken humanity's last fleet. He thought of the pain, the loss, the generations that had been lost to the alien forces, but more than that, he thought of the future of the galaxy that humanity would reclaim. of the justice they would bring to the alien empires that had thought themselves untouchable. The sound of explosions echoed through the ship as a wave of alien missiles slammed into the Resurgence's shields. The ship rocked violently, but the shields held firm. The aliens had been expecting an easy victory, but they were not prepared for what humanity had in store. They had underestimated the humans once before, and now they would pay the price. "Shields holding, Captain," the Eye reported, its calm voice offering a momentary sense of reassurance. "We've inflicted significant damage on the enemy fleet. The remaining forces are attempting to regroup." Varric nodded, but he knew this was only the beginning. The aliens had more ships, more firepower, and they would not give up easily. He ordered the fleet to press the attack, knowing that every moment counted. The aliens were already retreating, but they were not finished yet. The Resurgence and its fleet of warships would not rest until the last alien ship was in ruins, until the galaxy knew that humanity had returned. The battle for the Aggro system raged on for hours. It was a testament to humanity's resolve, to their unyielding will to survive. The aliens who had once thought themselves invincible were now facing a threat they had never anticipated. They had underestimated the humans, and in doing so, they had unleashed a force they could not control. Humanity had come back from the brink of extinction, and now it was taking its place in the stars once more. As the last alien ship was destroyed, the Resurgence hovered over the wreckage, its crew silent in the aftermath of the battle. The victory was hard-earned, but it was only the beginning. Captain Varric looked out into the vastness of space, knowing that the war for the galaxy had just begun. The Resurgence had made its mark, but it was only one ship, one fleet. The real fight was yet to come. "We've sent them a message," Varric said, his voice steady as he turned to face his crew. "Humanity is not dead. We're not ghosts. We're not a memory. We are the Last Armada, and we are just getting started." The crew, battered but unbowed, stood in silence. The galaxy would soon know what had happened here. The aliens would know that humanity had returned to claim its place in the stars. The first clash was over, but the war was far from finished, asked ChatGPT. The Resurgence hung in the cold emptiness of space, surrounded by the remains of the alien fleet it had just obliterated. The battle had been fierce, but the human warship had emerged victorious. Captain Varric stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the vast emptiness before him. The silence after the chaos was almost deafening. The crew was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. The first clash had been just the beginning, and the storm was only beginning to gather strength. "Status report," Varric said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. He knew that the aliens would not take this defeat lying down. They would come for revenge, and humanity's small fleet was not yet prepared to face the full force of the alien empire. "We've suffered minimal damage, Captain," the AI responded, its voice steady. "The enemy ships are completely destroyed. But our sensors have detected the approach of additional alien fleets. They are gathering in nearby sectors. It seems they've learned of our presence." Varric's lips tightened into a grim line. It had been too easy. The first victory had come swiftly, but it was only a prelude to what lay ahead. The aliens would not let this go, not after the humiliation they had suffered. And they would come in force, determined to wipe out the humans once and for all. "Prepare the fleet for departure," Varric ordered, his mind already working through the strategy for the next phase of the war. The fleet had to move fast, strike hard, and stay one step ahead of the alien forces. The element of surprise had worked in their favor once, but the aliens would not be caught off guard again. The crew moved with purpose, their actions coordinated and efficient. The Resurgence powered up, its engines humming with a low growl as it prepared to jump into warp speed. Varric took one last look at the shattered remnants of the alien fleet before turning to face his crew. "We've sent a message to the galaxy, but we're not done yet," he said, his voice unwavering. The storm is coming, and we need to be ready. The resurgence leapt into hyperspace, its sleek form cutting through the fabric of space like a knife. The galaxy beyond was vast, but humanity's warships had been designed to navigate it with speed and precision. The plan was clear: they would strike deep into alien territory, hitting their supply lines, their fleets, and their strongholds before the aliens could fully regroup. As the resurgence and its fleet jumped from one system to another, they left behind a trail of destruction. Every planet they attacked was left in ruins. Every alien fleet they encountered was torn apart. The humans were ruthless, not just fighting for survival, but for justice, revenge for the years of pain and suffering the aliens had inflicted upon them. In the midst of the chaos, Varroc's thoughts remained sharp, focused on the long-term goal. He had been part of the original human fleets that had been crushed, part of the final stand that had been lost. He had watched as humanity's brightest hopes turned to ash. But now, with the resurgence and its fleet, humanity had a chance to strike back. The storm had begun to rise, and nothing would stand in its way. But even as the humans struck back, the alien forces were not idle. The alien empires, humiliated by the defeat, had called upon their greatest commanders, their most powerful warlords, and their deadliest fleets. The response was swift. The galaxy was on the brink of an all-out war, and the aliens were determined to crush the humans once and for all. In one of the alien command centers, the supreme warlord of the alien empire, Orcs, stood before a massive holographic display, watching as his forces mobilized. The defeat at Zedros had shaken his confidence, but it had also awakened a new fury. He had underestimated the humans, thought them weak and scattered. But now he knew that humanity was far from dead. They had returned, and they had learned to fight. "We will not allow this to continue," Orc growled, his voice filled with venom. "We will hunt them down, destroy them before they can. Rally their forces. These humans think they can defy us, but they are wrong." His officers around him nodded in agreement, their faces set in grim determination. The galaxy belonged to the aliens, and they would not allow a few scattered human survivors to take it from them. Orcs issued orders for an immediate counterattack, mobilizing every available ship and fleet to strike at the heart of the human armada. Back aboard the resurgence, Varrec was deep in thought, his mind calculating the next move. The battle at Zedros had been a major victory, but it had come at a cost. The fleet was still small, and the enemy's response was inevitable. They would have to move quickly, stay ahead of the alien forces, and strike before the enemy could. "Regroup. We need to hit them where it hurts," Varrec muttered to himself. "Their supply lines, their reinforcements. We can't afford to sit back and wait for them to come to us." His thoughts were interrupted by the AI's voice once again. "Captain, we've detected an incoming fleet, large, fast, and heavily armed. It's closing in on our position." Varrec's heart sank. The storm had arrived. The aliens were coming, and they were coming in full force. "Set course for the Hades system," Varrec ordered, his mind already working through the details of the attack. "We'll take the fight to them." The Hades system was a critical point in the alien supply chain, a hub for their military operations. If the humans could take it, they would strike a blow at the heart of the alien war machine. It was a dangerous mission, but it was the only option. They couldn't afford to run. They had to fight. As the resurgence made its way toward the Hades system, Varrec gathered his senior officers in the war room. The room was dimly lit, the walls lined with holographic maps and tactical displays. Each officer sat at a console, their eyes focused on the unfolding battle strategy. "We've been successful so far, but this next mission will be our most challenging," Varrec said, his voice steady but serious. "The Hades system is one of the alien empire's most fortified positions. If we can take it, we can cripple their supply lines and slow their advance. But we'll have to hit hard and fast. We won't get a second chance. The officers nodded in agreement. They had been through countless battles, but none like this. This was a war for survival, for the future of humanity, and they were willing to give everything to ensure that humanity would not be wiped out again. As the fleet arrived in the Hades system, Varrock felt the weight of the mission settle on his shoulders. The alien forces were already mobilizing, and the battle would begin soon. There was no turning back. The Resurgence and its fleet moved into position, each ship poised to strike. The aliens had built massive defense platforms around the Hades system, and the first waves of enemy ships were already emerging from the shadows. The humans would have to fight their way through a gauntlet of alien defenses, each moment bringing them closer to their target. The first shots were fired, and the Resurgence was immediately surrounded by enemy ships. The battle erupted in a blur of flashing lights and exploding debris. The humans fought with a fury they had not known in years, their warships darting through the alien defenses with precision. The Resurgence fired its main guns, tearing apart enemy ships with brutal efficiency. The alien defenses retaliated, but the humans were faster, more unpredictable, and more determined. The battle raged on, with the two sides locked in a deadly struggle for control of the system. The alien fleet fought with the cold, methodical precision of a machine, while the humans fought with the raw passion and ingenuity that had always defined them. As the battle continued, the alien defenses began to crack. One by one, their ships were destroyed, their supply stations torn apart. The Hades system, once a symbol of alien strength, was falling, but the aliens were not giving up easily. They continued to fight, their ships relentless in their pursuit of the Resurgence and its fleet. Varrock stood at the helm of the Resurgence, his eyes focused on the unfolding battle. The storm was rising, but the humans were not backing down. They would fight to the end, no matter the cost. The galaxy had not yet seen the full power of humanity's wrath, but it would soon. The rising storm was about to break, and the aliens would soon learn that humanity would not be so easily defeated. "Keep pushing forward," Varrock said, his voice a calm command in the chaos. "We're almost there." The final push had begun. The storm was rising, and the aliens had no idea just how fierce the human armada was about to become, asked ChatGPT. The Resurgence drifted silently through the chaos of the Hades system, the heart of the human fleet pounding in rhythm with the distant explosions. The once imposing alien defenses had been shattered, but the storm had not yet passed. Humanity's vengeance was still only beginning to manifest in the full force it was capable of. The Resurgence's hull was scarred, its weapons fired to their limit, but its core was as relentless as the fire that burned in Captain Varrock's heart. The galaxy was witnessing the rebirth of a power it had once tried to eradicate, and nothing would stand in their way. Varrock stood at the command station, eyes scanning the tactical display, watching as the last remnants of the alien fleet disintegrated into fireballs. He wasn't celebrating, though. This victory was only the beginning of what humanity needed to accomplish. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for justice, for the world's lost, for every soul that had been crushed under the weight of the alien empires. The battle had been fierce, but he knew the aliens would retaliate, regroup, and launch counterstrikes. Only this time, they would be facing a united front. "Status?" Varrock asked, his voice low, more out of habit than need for information. He knew the Resurgence had done its part, but the mission wasn't complete. The system was still under heavy alien surveillance, and the fleet was vulnerable. While they tried to make their way deeper into enemy territory, "We've taken out their main defense platform, Captain," the AI replied. "The alien fleet is retreating, but they are coordinating a larger force in the outer systems. Their reinforcements will be here within the hour." Varrock gripped the armrest of his chair tightly, his gaze unblinking. "We need to move now. We can't afford to be pinned down." The Resurgence's engines hummed to life again as the ship began to pivot toward the next target, the heart of the alien war machine. The battle for the Hades system had been brutal, but they had succeeded in their objective. The alien supply chains were now crippled, their ability to sustain the war effort compromised, but that was only part of the bigger picture. Humanity needed more than just victories on the battlefield. They needed to create a new future, one where the aliens no longer ruled the stars. Varrock turned toward his senior officers, who were still recovering from the adrenaline of battle. He addressed them with the calm precision that had defined his leadership. "We've made our mark, but the galaxy won't change just because we won a single battle. We need to spread the message across every corner of this galaxy. We need to make sure the aliens know this war is no longer theirs to win." "We've hit their fleets hard," one of the officers said, exhaustion tinged in their voice. "But it's not just the fleets we have to worry about. The aliens have the upper hand in resources, technology, and manpower. We're still outnumbered." "We were outnumbered before," Varrock replied, his voice as cold and cutting as the vacuum of space. "But we weren't dead. We were never dead. And we're not going to stop until they understand that humanity doesn't die. We come back stronger, every single time." The Resurgence slipped deeper into the alien heartland, moving silently, unnoticed by the fleets of the alien warlords still regrouping. Every system they entered, every planet they ravaged, was a strike at the foundation of the alien empires. Each battle served as both a victory and a warning, sending a message that the humans had not only survived, but they had evolved. Strength of the aliens' arrogance had become their weakness. Humanity would use that arrogance against them. The crew's morale had never been higher. Though physically exhausted, they were driven by an unshakable belief in their cause. The humans were no longer just survivors. They were conquerors. The shadows they had once been forced to hide in had become their sanctuary, their proving ground. The Resurgence had become a beacon for their wrath, and now it was time to take that wrath to the next level. Days passed in quick succession, the Resurgence darting from system to system, striking with the precision of a surgical blade, slashing through alien defense lines like a predator on the hunt. Every victory was hard won, and each defeat of an alien fleet brought humanity closer to reclaiming the galaxy. In the darkest corners of space, however, an alien warlord named Aggro watched with growing concern. From his command station aboard the dreadnought Dominus, he surveyed the carnage the humans had wrought. His once overwhelming fleets were in tatters, their resources dwindling, their morale shattered. For the first time in centuries, Aggro was beginning to feel the weight of doubt press against his chest. The humans were not what he had imagined. They should have been eradicated, Aggro muttered under his breath, his sharp eyes narrowing, as he watched the reports of human victories flash across the screen. He had underestimated them, and now that mistake would cost him. These are no mere survivors. They are warriors. Aggro's rage swelled as he clenched his fists. We must find them. We must crush them before they can gather any more strength. He knew that if he didn't act quickly, the war would slip beyond his control. The humans were not fighting like animals driven by fear. They were fighting with purpose, with fury, and that fury was a threat not just to his fleets, but to the very existence of his empire. "I want every fleet mobilized," he ordered his command staff. "We're going to crush them, once and for all, no more games." The alien forces began to organize for an unprecedented counterattack, one designed to wipe out humanity's remaining fleet in one decisive blow. They would take the fight to the Resurgence and its ragtag fleet, and this time, they would not hold back. Aggro would ensure that humanity's last spark of defiance was extinguished forever. Meanwhile, aboard the Resurgence, Captain Varrock was preparing for his next move. His fleet had moved into position near the Galaran system, a key nexus point. That would allow them to strike at the heart of alien territory. The resurgence had become more than just a warship. It was a symbol of humanity's relentless pursuit of justice, and its crew was ready to follow Varek to the ends of the galaxy to see the mission through. "We're about to strike at the core of their power," Varek said, addressing his officers in the war room. "We've crippled their supply lines, but now we need to do something bigger. We need to hit their strongholds, disrupt their command centers. We need to send a message they can't ignore." Aggro's forces were already closing in on their position, but Varek was not intimidated. The human fleet had become a force of nature, and they had the upper hand in terms of tactics, agility, and determination. They weren't just fighting to win, they were fighting for everything that had been stolen from them. They were fighting for the future of humanity. "Prepare for engagement," Varek ordered. "We move out in 5 minutes." The resurgence shot forward, its engines igniting with the fury of a reborn species. The galaxy had been caught off guard by humanity's return, but now it would bear witness to the full force of their wrath. The final phase of their campaign had begun. In the heart of alien-controlled space, a massive fleet awaited. Aggro's flagship, Dominus, was the centerpiece of the alien forces. Its weapons were primed, its shields charged, and its crew ready for the final confrontation. Aggro would not let this opportunity slip through his fingers. As both fleets closed in, the tension in the void was palpable. This battle would decide the fate of the galaxy. It would mark the end of the alien empire's reign, or the obliteration of humanity's last hope. In that moment, only one thing was certain: there would be no turning back. The wrath of humanity was about to be unleashed. And this time, it would be the aliens who would pay the price. Ask ChatGPT. The time for whispers and shadows had passed. The resurgence now moved in full force, cutting a swath through the void as it made its way toward the alien heartland. Captain Varek stood on the bridge, his gaze unshaken as he watched the distant stars streak by, each one a potential target, each one a promise of humanity's victory. The galaxy was changing, and it was changing because of the fury that had been unleashed by the Last Human Armada. The alien warlords, once invincible in their arrogance, now faced something they had never encountered: a force that could not be broken, a people that could not be defeated. Humanity had come back from the brink, and they would not go quietly back into the shadows. The resurgence had become more than just a ship. It had become a symbol of everything that humanity had lost, and everything they had gained back. Its hull was scarred, its weapons fired to their limit, but it was still here, still fighting, and so were they. "Status report," Varek said, his voice steady but laced with a certain fire. He was no longer just a commander. He was the embodiment of humanity's collective rage, their undying will to survive, and now, to conquer. They had fought for years in the dark corners of the galaxy, hiding, rebuilding, growing stronger. But now, they had emerged into the light. And there was no turning back. "We're entering the system, Captain," the AI responded, calm but efficient. "The alien fleet is already in motion. It seems they've consolidated their forces for one final assault. Their command center is in the Torvus sector, the heart of their operations." Varek's fingers drummed lightly on the console in front of him. He knew what this meant. The battle would not be a quick skirmish like the ones before. This was the final confrontation. It would determine whether humanity could truly reclaim the galaxy, or whether they would fall once more. "Good. Prepare for assault," Varek ordered. His voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the intensity behind it. "We strike hard, we strike fast, no mercy." The fleet moved into position. The alien forces, aware now of the growing threat posed by the humans, were beginning to form their defenses. Their ships, though powerful, lacked the agility and cunning that had defined humanity's war tactics. Varek had learned from the past, and now he would make the aliens regret. their decision to underestimate humanity. On board the Resurgence, the crew was in motion, preparing for what would undoubtedly be the most critical operation they had ever undertaken. The officers manned their stations, each one aware of the weight of the moment. They had fought through. The darkness had faced near extinction, and now they would face the full might of the alien empire. But they were not afraid. They had nothing left to lose. "Fleet in position, Captain," one of the officers reported. "Weapons primed. Shields at full strength." "Good," Varric nodded. "Send the signal. Let the aliens know we're here." The Resurgence let out a deep, resonating hum as its weapons powered up. One by one, the other human ships in the fleet echoed the sound, their energy flowing into the guns and missile systems. The signal was sent a message to the alien forces that the humans had arrived, and they were not going to stop until the war was won. Varric's eyes narrowed as the first alien ships came into view. Their dreadnoughts, large and imposing, loomed on the horizon, surrounded by waves of smaller, agile fighters. The sheer size and numbers of the enemy fleet were intimidating, but Varric had seen worse. The humans had fought battles like this before, and they had won. "Take them down," Varric commanded. "Engage." The Resurgence's weapons opened fire, its cannons launching a series of devastating blasts that tore into the first wave of alien ships. The alien fleet responded with a barrage of missiles, but the Resurgence was too quick. It moved, darting through the alien fire like a predator, the ship's advanced systems keeping it one step ahead of the incoming attacks. The alien fleet had once ruled the stars through sheer might, but humanity had learned to fight smarter. They had learned to adapt, to hit their enemies where it hurt, to strike with precision. The Resurgence moved in close to an alien dreadnought, its weapons unleashing a hellish storm upon the enemy vessel. The alien ship, though massive and heavily armored, was no match for the concentrated firepower of the human fleet. It shuddered under the onslaught, its shields buckling under the cold. Relentless barrage. "Direct hit to their engines, Captain," the AI reported. "They're losing power." "Finish it," Varric ordered, his voice as cold and precise as ever. With a final salvo, the alien dreadnought exploded in a burst of fire and debris, its shattered remains drifting into the void. The first victory of many in this final push, but the battle was far from over. The alien fleet regrouped, retaliating with a force that threatened to overwhelm the human forces. They had underestimated humanity before, but now they were realizing their mistake. The humans were not just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win, and they were prepared to give everything to see it through. The Resurgence continued to weave through the alien fleet, launching attack after attack, each one landing with deadly accuracy. The alien ships were powerful, but they lacked the coordination and resolve of humanity's forces. The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation, with the kind of passion that comes only from knowing what's at stake. They were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every human soul that had been lost, for every world that had been destroyed. In the heat of battle, Varric's mind remained sharp, his focus unshakable. He had faced impossible odds before. But this was different. This was the final push, the moment that would determine the fate of humanity. And he would not allow them to fail. Not after everything they had been through, not after everything they had sacrificed. As the Resurgence tore through the alien fleet, Varric knew that the war was nearing its end. The alien forces, though vast, were beginning to crumble under the pressure. The humans had found their rhythm, their advantage. They had become a force that could not be stopped, a force that the galaxy would have to reckon with. But even as the Resurgence continued its assault, Varric knew the aliens would not go quietly. Their final stand would be fierce, their resolve unbroken. But it didn't matter. The humans had already proven that they could survive, and now they were about to prove that they could conquer. As the battle raged on, Varric stood at the bridge, watching as the alien ships continued to fall one by one. The storm was breaking, the final push was underway, and nothing could stop it. The aliens had no idea what was coming for them. They had underestimated humanity for the last time. "We've got them," Varek muttered to himself. "It's almost over." The resurgence continued its relentless assault, the final wave of alien forces retreating into the far reaches of space. The humans had delivered a blow from which the aliens would never recover. But even as the battle seemed to slow, Varek knew the war was far from finished. There was more to come, more to take back. And humanity would never stop fighting until the galaxy was theirs once again. The final push was just the beginning of humanity's reign. The storm had arrived. Ask ChatGPT. The battle had raged for hours, yet the resurgence and its fleet had not faltered. With every passing moment, the alien forces had grown weaker, their once imposing fleets breaking apart under the relentless assault of humanity's final push. Captain Varek stood at the command station of the resurgence, his gaze locked on the chaos unfolding across the stars. The galaxy had changed forever, and it was changing because humanity had refused to die, had refused to surrender. And now, in the cold void of space, the reckoning had come. "Status report," Varek commanded, his voice steady, though beneath it lay the unmistakable tension of a man who knew this battle would be the last. He had seen enough victories to know that this war, this final push, would not be won with ease. The aliens had been beaten back, but the question still lingered. Would they retaliate? Or had they finally been broken? "We've crippled their main fleet, Captain," the AI responded, its voice calm but tinged with the gravity of the situation. "Their reinforcements are scattered, and they're attempting to regroup in the outer systems. The Torvus sector is under heavy siege, but their leadership is in disarray. We've gained the upper hand." Varek's mind raced as he processed the information. The victory was in their grasp, but the final blow had to be struck before the alien forces could regroup. The last thing humanity needed was to face a counterattack when they were most vulnerable. The resurgence and its fleet had fought too hard, sacrificed too much, to let the aliens have another chance. "Prepare for the final assault," Varek ordered. His voice was calm, but it held the weight of 1,000 battles fought in one. "We move now, we finish this." The fleet surged forward, breaking through the remnants of the alien defenses, moving toward the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The Torvus sector was the last bastion of alien power, the place where their greatest warlords had gathered, confident that they could hold the line against the human forces. But what they hadn't accounted for was the fury of a species that had been pushed to the brink of extinction. The human fleet was not just a force, it was a reckoning, an unstoppable wave that would not rest until the galaxy was free from the alien grip. As the resurgence led the charge toward the heart of the Torvus sector, Varek's thoughts turned to the sacrifices made by the humans who had come before him. He thought of the countless worlds lost, of the families torn apart by the alien forces. Every ship in his fleet, every officer under his command, carried the weight of those who had fallen. But now they were fighting for something greater, not just revenge, but a future where humanity would rise, not as a mere survivor, but as a conqueror, as the rightful ruler of the stars. The resurgence and its fleet approached the Torvus sector with unparalleled speed. The alien warships that had once been feared throughout the galaxy were now no match for the human superior tactics. The resurgence darted through the enemy lines with precision, its advanced weapons systems tearing through the alien fleet. Each shot fired was a statement, each explosion a reminder that humanity would not be ignored. The aliens had underestimated them before, and now they were paying the price. "Direct hit on their command center, Captain," reported one of the officers, his voice tinged with excitement. "The enemy is in full retreat. Their warlords are scrambling to regroup, but their leadership is compromised." Varek allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. This was it, the end of the war. The galaxy would finally know peace, but it would be a peace forged by the blood and sweat of humanity's fight for survival. "Push them back," Varrock ordered, his voice unwavering. No mercy. The human fleet pressed on, its ships moving. Like a well-oiled machine, hitting their targets with pinpoint accuracy. The alien ships, once considered invincible, were now crumbling under the pressure. The resurgence was at the forefront, cutting through the alien defenses with brutal force. The aliens had no time to react, no time to regroup. They were shattered. Their fleets disorganized and scattered. As the battle continued to unfold, Varrock stood at the bridge, his eyes fixed on the scene outside. The alien ships were retreating, their last lines of defense collapsing under the relentless assault. The victory was close, so close that Varrock could taste it, but he knew better than to underestimate the enemy. The aliens were desperate, and they would not go down without a fight. The final moments of the battle would determine whether humanity would truly succeed, or whether they would be crushed once again. Enemy warlords are attempting to retreat into the outer reaches of the sector, the AI informed him. Their forces are nearly incapacitated. The remaining ships are no longer able to mount a significant defense. Varrock knew that the time had come to end this once and for all. The alien forces had been defeated, but they could not be allowed to regroup. The galaxy needed to see that humanity had won not just a battle, but the war itself. The last vestiges of the alien empire had to be wiped from existence. "All units, prepare for the final strike," Varrock commanded. "We finish this, once and for all." The resurgence surged forward, its weapons charging for the final blow. The alien warlords, their pride shattered, attempted to flee, but it was too late. The human fleet had them cornered, and there was no escape. The resurgence fired its final salvo, its weapons tearing into the alien command ships with devastating force. One by one, the alien warlords' vessels were destroyed, their once mighty fleets falling apart in a blazing inferno. Varrock watched as the alien ships disintegrated before his eyes, their remains scattered across the void. The resurgence had struck the final blow, and the alien forces were no more. The war was over. Humanity had won. But even as the last remnants of the alien fleet were obliterated, Varrock knew that the victory came at a cost. The human fleet had suffered casualties, and the scars of war were etched deeply into the resurgence. But that was a price humanity was willing to pay. The cost of freedom, of survival, had always been high. But the rewards were greater. As the final remnants of the alien empire faded into nothingness, Varrock allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of the fallen, of those who had fought and died for this moment. Their sacrifices would not be forgotten. They had given everything for this victory, for this future. The galaxy would remember their names, their courage, their resilience. Humanity had risen from the ashes of defeat, and now they would rule once more. The battle was over, the war was won, and the galaxy was free. "Report," Varrock said, his voice still calm, but now tinged with a sense of finality. "All enemy forces have been destroyed, Captain," the AI confirmed. "We have complete control of the Torvus sector. The remaining alien factions are in disarray, unable to pose a threat. Victory is ours." Varrock nodded, his eyes drifting toward the shattered remains of the alien fleet. The storm had come, and humanity had emerged victorious. The reckoning was complete. But even as the crew of the Resurgence celebrated their hard-earned victory, Varrock knew that the true work was just beginning. The galaxy, though freed from the grip of the alien empires, would need to be rebuilt. Humanity had not just won the war, they had reclaimed their place in the stars. But there was still much to do. The human race would have to rise from the ashes of war, rebuild their worlds, their societies, and their hopes. They would need to forge a new future, one where they could never again be pushed to the brink of annihilation. But that was for another day. For now, Varek allowed himself a small smile. The battle was over, the war was won, and humanity had emerged from the darkness. The reckoning had been delivered, and the galaxy would never forget what it had witnessed. Humanity had returned, and they would not be going anywhere. Ask ChatGPT.